Hello, everybody. So, a bunch of people have been sending me this on Discord. So, this is Right Values. It's another one of those political compass tests. And these are always a lot of fun. Even if they aren't particularly accurate, it always makes for some good memes. So, that being said, let's get into it. Okay, you'll be presented with a series of statements. For each one, click the button with your opinion on it. You can take the authentic right or lib-right test for more specific results, else take the generic test. Okay, I think I'll go with generic. While not perfect, right-wing political parties are useful means to an end. It depends if you mean they're actually right-wing or not. If they're actually right-wing, then yes, they are. We ought to ban pornography? Yes. We should not arrest people for using recreational drugs. I kind of agree with that. I don't think there's really a purpose in arresting drug addicts. Drug dealers, though, I think should be executed. Abortion should be legalized. Strongly disagree. Sexual deviance should not be normalized or accepted. Strongly agree. Promotion of high culture is a necessity. I'll agree with that. We must use pragmatism when changing politics. Not Okay, I guess I'll agree to that. Tradition tends to hold societies back. This is an interesting one. I'm not a traditionalist. It kind of depends upon the traditions in the society, because in some cases it does hold society back, in some cases it doesn't. So I think I'm going to say neutral on that. I take no issue with social liberalism, strongly disagree. A laissez-faire economy leads to monopoly and degenerate interests. Strongly agree. We ought to reduce regulations on industry. Once again, this is a difficult one because it's kind of like in some ways they're overregulated, in other ways they're underregulated. See, the really big companies like regulation because they make the barriers to entry so high it eliminates competition. In other ways, they have regulations set up so they can screw people. So I'm just going to say neutral. Oppression by corporations aren't a valid thing. Shouldn't it be isn't a valid thing? Because employees voluntarily work. I'm going to strongly disagree. Regulation reduces the positive effects of capitalism. I disagree. Most rich people get their wealth through merit. It depends on your definition of rich. Are we talking about people with like a net worth of $1 million or so? Some of the super rich do, like I think Bill Gates and Steve Jobs largely did. Others, like who just do currency speculation, don't. So I'm going to say neutral on that. We do not need to punish the rich to elevate the common man. I agree with that. We should have a minimal government alongside with a fully functional market. Now, I'm okay with fully functional market. I don't agree with minimal government, though. It is necessary for the government to intervene in the economy to protect consumers. Yes, I don't think there's ever been a truly laissez-faire economy. I think it's kind of a meme. Oppression by corporations is more of a concern than oppression by governments. I would actually agree with that because they oppress on a global scale, whereas most governments can only oppress within their own country. Companies are often also a lot more efficient at doing it. We need to have more generous safety nets. Honestly, I don't think they're bad at the moment. I think it needs considerable reform, but I'm not sure really the amount is the problem at the moment. So I'm just going to say neutral. We should have higher taxes in exchange for better welfare. I'm going to strongly disagree with that. Taxes are already high, particularly on upper middle income people. The super rich don't really pay taxes because they can evade them. But people who make like $100,000 to $1 million a year have to pay a lot in taxes, so I disagree with that. Instead of welfare, people should learn to pull themselves up by their own bootstraps. I'm kind of neutral in this one. I think in a lot of cases people can't, and in a lot of places they can, so I'm just going to say neutral. Single payer healthcare is desirable compared to privatized care. I've been thinking about this for a long time, but I do actually agree that public healthcare is better. Conservatism is about order and tradition, not liberty. I actually am not sure. I guess it depends if you like those things more, or if you think the definition of how it's generally used is. Because in an American, or I guess an Anglo context, conservatism does mean liberty. In a German or French context, it means order and tradition. So I think I'm going to say neutral. So it depends too much on the country. Anarchism cannot exist perpetually, strongly agree. Hereditary or appointed succession is better than election. I actually am kind of indifferent to monarchy to a certain extent. Um, I like the idea of electing people for life and having regular referendums to continue their mandate. That's kind of what I think, but in general, I don't have a strong preference. Federalism is better than unitary government. Once again, I know I'm ducking on a lot of these, but it depends a lot on the country. Like if you're like Sweden or Denmark or Slovakia or even somewhere like Japan, unitary government makes more sense because of how dense they are or how small the population or geographic size is. But if you're a country like Canada or the US, you have to have a federal government. Like China being a unitary state is insane, but I'm going to say neutral on that. I'm being a big brain centrist this time. I would rather live in Francoist Spain than in the Roman Republic. I don't know, both of them are pretty cool to me. They're cool for different reasons. I guess I prefer Francoist Spain, but I wouldn't mind living in either of them. Democracy ought to be done away with as it makes politics uninnovative. That's a very weird take. I don't think I've ever heard that before. That democracy makes things too unprogressive. I'm just going to say neutral because I don't understand the question. I prefer a Venetian Doge esque system to an absolute monarch like Louis the 13th. Um, I don't really have a strong preference one way or the other. I want an absolute monarch. I don't really know what absolute monarch. Actually, you know what? I prefer a strong executive, so I'm going to go with agree. Um, I don't know what absolute monarch really means, but I'll say okay. If there has to be a state, I would choose the old American Republic to the ancient regime. Once again, it kind of depends on the national character. The French prefer kind of more centralized bureaucratic government, while Americans prefer kind of more decentralized, more kind of liberal, libertarian style government. I personally would rather live under the ancient regime, but yeah. My nation's ideals are downright better than most other nations on Earth. No, I live in Canada. In no way are they better. Rather than bombing innocent countries, we should primarily work on peace. I actually kind of agree with that. My problem isn't so much war per se, but a lot of the countries we invade is kind of completely retarded. So I'm gonna somewhat agree with that. Countries with authoritarian regimes should be toppled. No. Alliances are beneficial. Like, who's going to say no to this? I guess maybe some isolationists. We should focus more on issues outside of our nation. I'm going to disagree with that. We have an over focus on, like, democracy and human rights in other countries. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. That's too dependent on situation. Immigration should be easier. No. Having too much. I feel like the person who wrote this English maybe wasn't their first language. Having too much refugees lead to frequent terrorist attacks. Shouldn't be having too many refugees leads to frequent terrorist attacks. I don't really know how that's arguable. Illegal immigration is morally wrong in most cases. Yeah. Illegal immigrants and regular citizens deserve the same treatments, which undermines the entire premise of living in a society. So I strongly disagree. My religion should be spread as much as possible. Yes, we must bring the world to Christ. Theocracy is a good idea. Christian theocracy isn't really a thing. At least not in my opinion. Like, from my understanding, the bishoprics and like papal state were more or less just run the same as feudal kingdoms were. Just the lords were selected from the ecclesiastical hierarchy instead of from the nobility. Although a lot of the ecclesiastical hierarchy was the nobility. So I'm kind of neutral on this. I don't think it really means anything. Religion is just fiction for humans to develop. I kind of love this fedora thing. Like it's saying, like the what I always hear is there's some random throwback uncontacted tribe in the Amazon that has a language of 12 words, and they don't have any concept of God or the afterlife. And I'm like, so what you're saying is religion is a product of civilization, and as humans got smarter, they developed religion. Whereas if humans are really dumb, then they don't have religion. I don't really get how that helps their case, so I strongly disagree. Religion should play a much smaller role compared to the present. Well, it depends on the religion, but I'm going to disagree with that. Churches should be taxed. I think if it used to be, if churches had the amount of property they used to have, then yes, but they're barely making ends meet now, so no. Religious organizations often provide the better help compared to other nonprofits. Once again, I don't think an English speaker wrote this. I actually have no idea, so I'm just going to say neutral. A rapid technological advancement causes more bad than good. I'm going to disagree with that. Ted Krasinski was right. Or Ted Kaczynski. I don't know why I always say Krasinski. Maybe it's because I'm talking about that actor. I'm going to disagree. I like civilization. We should accelerate our technological progress. I agree. I don't think we invest enough money into it. Rather than trying to restrict factories, we should let technology advance and find an easier solution in the future. That's what I tend to think. Decelerating our society could mean a harder life, but overall it's worth it considering the happiness decelerating would bring. I don't know what decelerating means. Does that mean like people working fewer hours? I guess I agree with that. The more we accelerate, the more risks there is. The more risk there is. I guess. I don't really understand the question. Each race has their own strengths and weaknesses. Strongly agree. My race is superior to other races or vice versa. AKA my race is inferior. Strongly agree. We should judge people by their character rather than their race. I mean, like this is such a just kind of generic political statement. It's like, are we talking? It depends on the context. Because if you're talking on like a public policy context, you can't judge people as individuals. You have to judge them as a group. If we're talking like some dude down the street and how you view that particular guy, that's a completely different question. So I'm going to disagree with this. Racism is a real issue. I mean, I guess it's a real issue, but it's not a bad thing. So I guess I'm going to disagree. Affirmative action is good. The only kind of affirmative action I'm sympathetic toward is for poor people or for people with disabilities. Strongly disagree. Okay, so I got very conservative, which isn't surprising. I got more public ownership than free market, which is kind of weird because I expected myself to kind of be right in the middle. I got centralist, which is to be expected. I don't think that's particularly weird. I don't really understand how this works. So, is this conservative here or is that conservative there? Oh, okay, I looked it up. So I got cultural revolutionary is what that means. As far as public ownership goes, okay, so I got more in favor of the free market, I think. It's kind of confusing how this works, because I think how it works is. No, sorry, I'm retarded. Okay, because it says the description here. Okay. So it means I got 82% conservative, 18% cultural revolutionary. Then I have on market versus government central planning, I got 70%. I'd probably put myself maybe at like about 50-50. I tend to be pretty kind of mixed on that, to be honest. I think a mixed market economy tends to work pretty well. Then we have centralist, which I probably tend like a 6 out of 10 on the centralization scale, so that's accurate. Nationalism versus internationalism. Part of it is just because I come from Canada, and I really don't feel any loyalty or identity with relation to my nation of choice. Religious makes sense. Pro industry, not really surprising, to be honest. Identitarian, very strongly so. It's kind of funny how I got neutral here, but identitarian. So let's see here. More about the next closest matches. More about the ideologies. Um, does it say where are the ideologies? This is bugged. You can send these results. Okay, let's see here. Okay, it's taking a while to load. Ideologies. Yeah, for whatever reason, it didn't give me my what my overall ideology is supposed to be. So I don't really know, but that was my horribly done right values political survey. So I hope you enjoyed that nonsense, and I'll talk to you guys.